what are the problems ahead of time? What is the attack on black that the Texas legislature is trying to impose on us now? And dude, I'm telling you, when you look at it from just one thing, you say, oh, okay, well, maybe they're not, maybe they're just doing something because they think that's in the health, safety, and welfare of the people. Then you see a second thing, you say, well, maybe it was just a coincidence. Then you see a third thing, you're like, oh man, what's going on? Then you see fourth and fifth, you're like, hey man, this looks like what? This looks like an attack on black.
Attack on black.
Attack on
Did
black.
you come up with that one?
Well, you know what? I had some help.
Attack on black.
But the way you describe it is more like a sneak attack on black. Like
Well, you know what?
A sneak attack. You have to read the fine print to
That's
know
what
that it's
lawyers
really,
do.
yeah, to really know
That's
it's
what
action.
that's what lawyers
Yeah,
always
but
do.
you know why it's a sneak attack?
Why?
Because we as a people have to be aware of what's going on. Not just wait till the presidential election comes around. Not just, hey, vote for people and then say, oh, I'm just gonna trust them to make sure everything's cool. You've got to be able to stay invested on a day-to-day basis, week-to-week basis, year-to-year basis, to make sure that laws are being passed that are going to be fairly and equally applied to us and our community.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are they doing, man? What's the
Talk to
government
us.
doing?
Well, the thing is this, you know what, we've talked a few times about voting rights, right? And we've talked about how, the big lie that Trump has spun that said, hey, look, that there was all this fraud and things that has led to these laws that are being passed. We've talked about in the past how in Georgia, you can't, if you give somebody a big red and some Cheetos in the line, that you can go to jail. You remember that?
Yeah, big red Cheetos.
A big red and Cheetos in the state of Georgia.
That's illegal to have a big red and Cheetos?
It's illegal for me to go up for somebody standing in line for me to give them a big red and Cheetos if I'm in Georgia. You could go to jail for that.
And I love Cheetos. I would be set up.
Boy, I love Cheetos too.
But they're not paying us right now.
Right.
That is true.
But the thing is this. One thing that we have learned over the past, since the last time we were here, there's been an organization called the Heritage Action Group.
Wait a minute, is that like the Heritage Foundation?
Yeah, the Heritage Foundation.
For those people, like we kick it like this all the time.
Right.
Like we're a couple of brothers from Oak Cliff, but we kind of educated.
No, that's true.
So what is the Heritage Foundation? What did you say the other one was again?
The Heritage Action Committee. Well, basically, the Heritage Foundation is a combination of individuals that are very conservative. They raise a lot of money. I believe last year they raised like $122 million that they use to go around and to try to develop policies and develop laws that are of the conservative nature, as they see it. The Heritage Action Committee is a committee or a sister organization of the foundation, where they have money that they are going around from legislature to legislature trying to give draft legislation or suggestions as it relates to different items that they want to see passed. Well, they had a meeting, the Heritage Action Committee had a meeting around April 29th, where the lady who was over the committee decided that she was going to talk to her, her constituents. She was feeling good because two things had happened. They had passed some voter restriction or voter suppression laws in Iowa, and they also had passed some in Georgia, the ones we were talking about. So she's in front of a group, and what she says is this. They don't like to come out and say, they say, oh, it's, public integrity, we need to have voter integrity and all that stuff. But then when it came down to it, when she was speaking amongst her own, she said, hey, you know what? Not only have we been, supporting these ideas, but we have been drafting this legislation. They have drafted this legislation and they have gone around to each individual state, giving this legislation to individuals within those bodies, or either someone that's supposed to be of that community, so it looks like it has a grassroots type feel to it. And all the time, they have been the puppet or the puppet master behind the screen, pulling and pushing for these laws to be implemented.
Sneak attack.
Sneak attack.
See, I've been working together.
Yeah. Well, about 26 years.
26 years.
Right. So I mean, it was really kind of so we had a situation where we have all these voting laws, and you remember, in Texas already, the Senate has passed a bill, the House has passed a bill, both for restrictions. of the voting rights.
So what exactly are these restrictions?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of restrictions. They're really focused in on the mail ballots. They're trying to make it harder for an individual to be able to request a mail ballot. In the past, you could just call in, or you may have third-party organizations. Let's say someone like Rock the Vote. Rock the Vote would be able to get set up, and then you could go to Rock the Vote and go to Rock the Vote, put in the information, and Rock the Vote would make the request as it relates to getting a mail ballot application.
Right.
They're passing laws now that are saying that third parties cannot make a request with respect to these ballots. So what's going to happen is that those individuals, and let's just be honest, you know, a lot of people don't read the fine print, as you said earlier.
They don't have a lawyer like you.
Right. And so what happens is, I mean, there have been numerous times that I've talked to people and they would ask me, well, how do I get this information, or how do I do this and that? And to me, it's pretty simple because I do a lot of reading, and of course, as being an attorney, I'm exposed to that type of information, but a lot of people aren't. So a person could go to that Rock the Vote and go to whatever state he was in and make that request. They're trying to do away with that type of stuff right now.
They're trying to make it less accessible.
Less accessible. There are also there are laws as it relates to that you have to have some type of identification.
What's wrong with having identification? You have identification to get to get a driver's license. What's wrong with that?
Well, I understand that. Everybody generally has identification, but there are communities where requirements such as that could have a negative effect, such as black folks, Hispanic folks, poor folks of all persuasions.
Okay, I'm
Right.
going to talk to the folks, but I'm asking them set up questions, folks. If you guys want to ask a set up question as well, go ahead and put that in the chat. But meanwhile, why do black people and Hispanics don't have a driver's license? That's all it takes, right?
Well, the thing is, black folks have driver's license, but there are times where you have situations that may arise that someone's license may not be valid at that particular time.
So if it's not valid, you can't use it?
No, you have to have a valid license.
I mean, but if it's expired, can you use it?
Generally, no.
What?
No,
you
you
mean
have
to
to-
tell me if
no.
I'm old, not that I am, well, if I'm old and I'm no longer driving and my license expired and I just use it for identification, it's not valid, man?
Generally not.
Wow.
Not at all.
Now there are some alternatives as it relates to identification, but the thing is this: it's not even so much the fact of the identification, but if I'm then having to let's say I do have my license, right? I make my request for the mail ballot, and if they want more than me to just put my license number on there, right? Then that means I'm gonna have to go down to the store, go over to the little photocopy machine, photocopy my little license. I'm gonna have to go back home, put it with the deal, put it with the application, seal it in the envelope, sign it right, and mail it in. And then at each interval, that'll just get me my ballot. I'm gonna have to do the same thing again according to some of these provisions that they're trying to pass if I'm sending in the ballot, after that. So there are things that are what we call cumbersome, that have a negative effect on someone being able to exercise their right to vote. And what we have to do is this: we have to look at the obstacle that these requirements are imposing versus what are they alleviating. And if you remember, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton.
That's the guy that's under indictment?
That's the guy that's under indictment.
I just thought I'd just bring it up.
Yeah, that's the guy under indictment.
Some people say that's throwing shade, but
Right. But his office has investigated thousands of hours on voter fraud, and they found 16 instances.
Wait a minute, voter fraud. That's massive voter fraud, right?
Well, do you think 16 out of...
16 sure is a lot of people.
I mean, that's...
See, they'll set up question.
that's...
Right.
No, I don't think that's massive.
Right.
They've done thousands of hours.
16 people?
16 times. Right. But that is supposed to call into question the integrity of the election. It's just kind of crazy. Now, one thing that I saw as I was reading through the bill, one thing that was interesting is that they said, now, of course, they're going through this whole thing about being able to match the signatures and things of that nature, right? And they had a provision in this bill that said that rather than, when you get a signature in the match, rather than just looking at 2 examples of the signature within the last 6 years that they can now look at any signature that is on file. Now think about that.
Now, what if I have like a stroke or something like that, and my signature's changed?
That's correct. So let's say now, if you had that stroke, right? Let's say 10 years, no, let's say you had it 2 years ago.
Right.
And they just happen, rather than looking at the signatures that are on file for the last 6 years, let's say they go back 12. Because that one could be still on file. And if they looked at the one that was from 12 years ago and look at the one from now,
it don't match.
they're going to say it don't match.
Okay, now right before we go to our 20-minute break, that's somewhat like Reconstruction,
Oh, that is.
Because that's back in the day of my great-grandfather. So when they would ask him, because he couldn't read, so they asked him to mark an X. So
Right.
they say, validate which X is yours.
Right.
Yeah, which X? Okay, boy, that don't look like your X.
That don't look like your ex.
It's the X.
Well, how can you tell that's your ex? Yeah.
All X's look alike.
Right.
That sounds kind of familiar, don't it? But anyway, all X's look alike, right?
Yeah. Unless I guess you put a little squiggly on your X
Yeah,
or
and
something.
that don't match up, boy.
But, yeah, because somebody else could do the squiggly too.
Okay, all right.
As
Go
someone
ahead.
who's young, though, I'm thinking I've changed my signature so many times just for fun. Like, I'm just still trying it out. I'm young. Like, this looks cute. This looks cute.
Yeah,
Right.
put
So-
curly cues on
Yeah,
it.
so the idea of like that, me being held to the way I signed something just that day.
Right.
I'm like, that's a little intense.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this: I've never had a stroke, but my signature, when I look at my signature from 5 years ago versus how I signed today, they're drastically different. I've had instances where I've written checks to people where I had to call and verify that I actually signed it because the signature looked different from the one
that ain't the
that
real
was
reason,
that
man.
was on file.
The checks you write are a lot bigger than others.
No.
We'll be right back after this break. Go ahead and play us a couple of breaks, a couple of commercials, all right?
Hey, how you doing? This is
All
Ed
right.
Red, the Commish radio show.
Mike
Stay
Smith.
tuned and tune in and be up to speed on everything in social justice, human rights, and politics on
Mike's
the Commish
muted?
radio show.
Oh, Mike's
Every
muted, yeah.
every
Yeah, okay.
Saturday,
I thought you was asking for that.
5 p.m. on the
No,
First
no,
World Radio
no,
Network.
I was like, what?
Okay, so where we at on what we need to talk about?
My name is Gail Todd.
Yeah, we can
with
go back
Town
and talk
View
about.
Realtors. If you find yourself in the
Let's kind of segue into the.
or maybe you want to be a part of the
What else?
State
You
Market
said
Market
attack on black. I mean, that's just one thing. What else? And then we can go into the whole deal about the social studies deal.
Okay, attack on black.
The 1619 project.
Again, that's 214.
So we can casually talk about stuff like
And we
that.
start off with the blues.
Is
We
it
have a good
casually
time about the
talking
blues.
now?
So tune in every Wednesday from 6 to 7. Catch the Howard
I
Scott
love
Show.
that
We have a
Howard
whole lot of
Scott.
fun on Fishbowl Radio.
3,
Jump in.
2.
All right, you must know we have the best drops in the world. As I've often said, this radio show is the best radio show from Como to the Congo. If you're from Fort Worth, where we got that great election coming up, Deborah Peoples. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I am not going to do that. I would shamelessly not tell you to vote for Deborah Peoples. But if I was going to tell you to vote for somebody, I would say vote for Deborah Peoples. That being said, what else is happening with this attack on black?
I mean, it's.
How much time do we have?
Yeah, we have. I mean, yeah, we don't have enough time, but we're gonna focus in on a few things. I've always heard from conservatives that whenever the federal government wanted to pass something, they would always talk about states' rights. We need local control of what's going on.
Right.
All right, you can't impose your Washington D.C. standards on what we do in Texas.
States' rights, isn't that the same people that used to argue against civil rights, they would say states' rights?
That's right, because they wanted to say states' rights meant they wanted to preserve their Southern heritage,
There you go, that word again, heritage.
and do those
I'm seeing
things.
a connection. Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, states' rights, things of that nature.
Heritage basically means we won't move on. We're stuck, basically.
Well, you know what? Whenever I hear somebody talking about their Southern heritage, right, and they always talk about it in the context maybe of the Confederate flag or something like that. I mean, my first thought is heritage. Okay, y'all were traitors and you all were losers. So that's what you want to continue to celebrate? That you're traitors and losers. It seems a little far-fetched. That wouldn't be a heritage that I would try to embrace. But
I mean, you can always remix it, sound a little better. I think that's what they've been doing. They weren't traitors. They were loyalists to their principles. You know.
Okay.
They just didn't agree with everybody else.
Right. I get it.
I see where she gets it from.
So, but anyway, we had these states' rights, right? And of course, the conservatives have always said, hey, look, not only do we not want the federal government telling us what to do, we don't want the state of Texas to tell us what to do. We in Dallas, Texas, we in Waco, we in Hempstead, whatever county we in, we should be able to pass those laws that apply in our jurisdictions. You heard that before, Ed?
Yeah.
Man.
But it don't make no sense, though.
Now, but I'm sitting here and I'm just doing some casual reading. I'm looking around and I start reading these articles in the Texas Tribune, which is a good website, especially because they follow a lot of the going-ons on the Capitol and what legislation's being passed and things of that nature. And I start reading this stuff about Republicans are championing bills to restrict what school districts can teach in social studies.
Wait a minute, Republicans are championing bills
To restrict
what school districts, right?
what school districts, which are local,
Right, very local.
which school district, what they can teach, not overall, but in social studies.
Okay.
You know, civics, social studies, things of that
All
nature.
right, so I'm on play devil's advocate. What's wrong with that? I mean, aren't they interested in education? What's wrong with that?
Well, but the thing is that it seems like the things that they are trying to prohibit would be those things that black folks would like to be able to investigate, would like to research, and would like to banter back as far as educational pursuits.
Like what?
Okay, have you heard about this this project that was in the New York Times in the year 2019? It was called the 1619 Project.
Yeah, isn't that 1619 when black people were first enslaved and brought to North America?
That is correct. So 2019 was the 400th anniversary of 1619, which is when the first slaves arrived in North America in Jamestown. Was it Jamestown?
Yeah,
Jamestown, Virginia, and they were enslaved. And what happened, this New York Times in 2019, they went through an exhaustive expose that won a Pulitzer Prize that basically said that the founding of the United States and the building of the United States occurred actually in 1619, and that the prosperity that the United States has received since then, and a lot of the way that it has been developed, has been built on maintaining those legacies of slavery in different manners. So it's a provocative type thought, right? And what they did, there was a young lady, I can't remember her name, Hannah Jones, I think her name is. She was over that for the New York Times, and they went and got 17, 18 different scholars who went through different areas, right? Let's say about capitalism, different things, and just talked about how from 1619 till now that it impacted not only black folks, but also the country as a whole. Man, I was reading one about capitalism, right?
Right.
And man, I didn't know. We always hear about slavery and we hear about folks picking cotton, right?
Yeah.
You know what I didn't know? Cotton basically monetized the whole South. The South was running everything. All the big money was in the South. And when they made a comparison between what commodity would cotton be like today, right? You know what it was like?
Like what?
Oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
Cotton. You got to remember, back before cotton and the cotton gin, people were wearing wool for coats, wool for shirts and pants, things of that nature. Cotton was allowed people to be able to change their way of dress, all types of things. Lighter,
Right.
breathe more, things of that nature. So cotton, man, was a booming industry. It was like oil and gas.
Very lucrative.
And so what happened is this. Let's just think about it. You're working, it's just like you've got coal miners. It's like you've got people working out in the oil fields, right? And they making all that money from oil and gas. And on top of that, they ain't even got to pay nobody.
Sounds wonderful.
Well,
For them. For them. Yeah, for
But
them.
it means black people are a commodity then.
What black folks were a commodity, which also became an instance because not only from the work that they were doing, but then them themselves became a commodity. So people were monetizing not only the products of their work, but they themselves were products or they will monetize themselves. So the whole 1619 project just basically goes through and it looks at different avenues or different segments of America and goes through and makes that comparison.
Okay, so what's wrong with 1619? Why are people getting upset about that?
Oh man, because they're saying that it puts America in a bad light. It makes us seem as if we're a racist country.
Oh, really?
Really?
Slavery itself did not do that, but talking about it.
But talking about it, yeah. And so they're saying that. And if you remember, before Trump was defeated
And he was defeated.
fairly,
Fairly.
before he
And-
was defeated,
And how many law cases did he lose?
he filed over 60 law cases.
Oh.
All were defeated except one.
Except one. So
One. And
one
that
out of
one,
59.
yeah, 1 out of 50, 1 out of 60. And the one said that he won, said that the people who were watching the ballots, rather than being 20 feet back, they could be 10 feet back. That's the one he won. You follow?
That's a pretty big deal, that 10 feet.
That
Yeah,
10 feet,
that made a big
that
difference.
changed a lot of
That
votes, I'm
changed
sure.
a lot, yeah.
I know. But the thing is this, is that before he left office, he had issued a executive order that nowhere in the government could they do any type of policy discussions, training, or anything for racial bias or anything of that nature that was piggybacking off of the 1619 project.
Yeah, what else you expect from the son of a Klansman?
Well, yeah,
He's the son of a Klansman. I didn't
Right.
say the other word you thought I was going to say.
right.
He is a son of a Klansman because his father was arrested for being in a Klan riot in the 1920s. It's bad public record.
I just don't understand how much more of our history they could really take out of the textbooks. Because I remember growing up and learning that slavery was just a form of indentured servitude.
Right.
And I know the textbooks that get sent around the country, they're made in Texas, unfortunately.
Right.
Like McGraw-Hill is right here.
Right.
So it's like what affects here really affects the whole country.
And you know what, Cindy, that's a great point because this is a concern. The book companies, Texas is so large that the book companies generally do not want to make a book, a history book, that they cannot also sell in Texas. So the Board of Education in Texas holds sway not only on what students in Texas learn, but throughout the whole country. You follow me? So it's interesting you said that. Now, she graduated Ed from high school in 2012. As I was doing some research, I found out that as late as 2018, the Texas textbooks that our students were learning, that not until 2018 did they acknowledge that slavery was one of the reasons of the Civil War.
You say yes. I remember that, learning that it wasn't like, because I was in a class where it was like a gifted and talented. And I'm from DeSoto, so it's like, it's people, knowledgeable black people there. So it's like, they tell their kids things. And so then we go into school and it's not matching. And so
Right.
we're like, excuse me, that's not what my mama said.
Right.
What did they say to that? They said, we got to teach you that because that's in the
That's
book."
that's the
That's exactly
curriculum.
what they
That's what the book says. Or even when it came to those types of sections in the book, we'll kind of gloss over it
Right.
instead of like even bringing up the
We
conversation.
won't even talk about
We'll
it.
just go to couple pages back.
Because
Like,
whatever.
When I was in school.
Hold on, man. If you
I'm
don't get on
sorry.
there, you just.
You've been
Hold on.
passionate.
Hey, wait a minute. Hey, let's get a different view.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. We're going to put you on there. But let's just I'm going to just tell you this. This guy's a producer, right? He's just supposed to be pushing buttons to make sure that we on there. But what we do here on this radio show is so compelling. It gets you to just think and say something. So open your mics up so they can hear you. Well, tell us what we're talking about.
I was just gonna say, like, when I was in school and I graduated in the year 2019,
Got it.
we read Huckleberry Finn, and we skipped the whole part where it talked about slavery and stuff.
Really?
We're gonna not talk about that. And I was like,
Yeah.
but it happened. Don't you want to teach us this so it doesn't happen again?
Right.
Yeah.
And like they're trying to even gloss over the Holocaust now.
Right.
Really?
Yeah.
They don't want to talk about it. It's too sensitive.
I like it.
You know what?
I like it.
The
Terrific trend on the mic. Man, hey, but let me ask you this. You graduated in 2019.
High
What
school.
school did you, high
Martin.
school? Martin High School, okay. All right, that's the Arlington School District, okay. I just want to make sure we on record of where it's at. Okay, go ahead.
and you know what? I just read,
Thank you, Troy.
the Board of Education, even in Texas, doesn't even make reference to the first female presidential nominee that we've had, Hillary Clinton. That was too divisive to have her listed. Now, but let's look at this. So specifically, this bill, which is HB 3979, right? It expressly, right, forbids the discussion of the advent of slavery in the territory that is now in the United States constituted the true founding of the United States. That's the 1619 premise. It also says, right, it prohibits education that would require an understanding of the 1619 project itself.
So basically, don't worry
So
about it.
it specifically states that.
It specifically states it. Now let me, but it doesn't stop there, Ed. It doesn't stop there. They say that for any social studies course in the required curriculum, a teacher may not be compelled
May not be compelled
to discuss a particular current event of widely debated and currently controversial issue of public policy or social affairs.
Well, Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
I knew.
Yeah.
You can't even talk about Black Lives Matter. And to be honest, you know what?
What's that?
It's probably keeping you from talking about what? The insurrection.
Oh,
We don't want to talk about that.
It's insurrection. That's where the
The president's people stormed, the insurrectionists stormed the United States Capitol,
and breached the Capitol.
right on
building,
January 6th of 2020,
which
2021.
Which was a felony.
which was a felony, right?
A federal.
Yeah, felony. People died,
Okay.
right?
Just want to make sure
Yeah,
you guys didn't forget.
couldn't continue
It's a lot
with your
of practices
certification
that
until they cleared the building, damage to the building, things of that nature. That would be a current event, widely debated and currently controversial
about
issue. Can't talk about that. Now, how's that? You got, okay, let's say this. If this was in place back in 2001, teachers couldn't even talk about the folks flying the planes into the World Trade
Wait a
Center.
minute, they can talk about that
Why's that?
because then that's not controversial. Everybody knows that you can talk about that.
Well, the thing is that the reasons of why it happened could be controversial.
Can't talk about that though.
Oh, right. So what we're doing is this. We are now, the Texas legislature is now making itself a social studies teacher.
Well,
They sitting there telling these kids, these teachers, what you can and cannot do. And it was interesting. There was an article in the Dallas Morning News today, where the superintendent of the Dallas Independent School District said that he was thinking of recommending, or the board may make a decision to file suit over this law because it impinges upon the First Amendment freedoms of discussion and thought with respect to teaching. But just think about that. You can't talk about something that's happening today.
There's no such thing as current events then.
Right. Well, I guess the thing is
Well,
this.
it depends on how you spend it.
Well, I guess this is the thing. I guess the legislature is saying, well, they're supposed to be teaching history, and if it happened today, that ain't
That's
history.
what-
That ain't history.
But
That's
if it
not.
happened this morning and it's too, it's history.
Yeah.
That's true.
But you know what? But when I see this, where we're specifically targeting the 1619 project, and I would recommend everybody just go out there, and it's lengthy.
We'll put that on the chat as well.
Right.
1619.
That 1619 project it is very insightful. And you know what? Everything I read, I may not agree with, but guess what? It invokes thought. It makes you think and question and have discussions that lead to what? Resolutions. You follow me? Perfect example, man. I got a guy in my office, man. You know, white guy. He's a libertarian. We see things different on a lot of issues. But you know what? He and I can have a real discussion about things. And we have had real discussions.
He works for you?
No, he doesn't work for me. He's an attorney himself. He's in my office, right? And so, but we have good and hard-nosed debates. And I'm talking about we go at it. And sometimes we get hot with each other. But you know what? At the end of the day, we usually can come to a resolution of whatever the issue may be. He'll listen to my side, I'll listen to his side, and he has given me insight as it relates to how things may be or how they are perceived, and I likewise have given him those things. So what I'm trying to say is having tough discussions is what needs to be had, rather than trying to say, oh, we ain't gonna talk about it, we ain't gonna do this, we ain't gonna do that, because we want to whitewash what has happened.
No pun intended.
No pun
Yeah.
intended.
That's really scary to think of. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the way things are going. It's like, if you don't believe in my side, then there's no side for you. Like,
Right.
the art of common ground has just been lost.
It has. But the thing is this. I mean, the thing is this. The one thing that I just outlined in the situation in my office is that we are willing to talk and discuss. If people aren't willing to talk and discuss, then you can't reach common ground.
Because as soon after I said that, I did think, I mean, it is easy to come to common ground when you just have differing opinions. But when one person's opinion is that you shouldn't have an opinion,
Right.
it's not really common ground to
That's
come
the way it's been
to.
going for the last couple of years. This is the reason why we've been protesting.
Yeah.
Right. And you know what? And we talking about protesting. Hey, attack on Black 3.
That's the thing.
Attack on Black
You know
3.
again with that attack on?
Oh, man.
Are you running for office? You get
No, man. I'm not running for all I'm running for is an enlightenment. That's all I'm running for.
That's beautiful. So MJT for President 2024.
No. MJT for enlightenment. That's all. Let my people go.
LBJ, MJ.
All right. So what's happened last year during the pandemic? We had George Floyd got killed, right?
Right.
And of course, I'm gonna be honest. I have never watched the 9-minute complete video of George
I
Floyd.
can't, honestly.
You know what? I can't. Just the little stretches that I've seen are just so shocking to me. There's no way I could watch that for 9 minutes.
It's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. But the thing is that we had protests, right?
Mm-hmm.
And protests came out, and not only within this jurisdiction or this state, this area, not only in this country, but across the world. So it was an impactful type of situation. So, what's going on now? Oh, people, they don't like Black Lives Matter. They don't want people to protest, things of that nature. What they want to do is they want to say, hey, look, because I saw one time on TV, a guy was talking about Black Lives Matter, BLM, oh, that's burn, loot, and murder. They don't want to see the principle or the request that's being made that, hey, that our lives matter too. But Texas legislature hadn't let us down. So what have they done, Ed? They're trying to criminalize protesting. Did you know that?
No, how are they doing that?
They have now passed a law in the Senate, Senate Bill number 912, where they are amending Section 4202, which is dealing with riots. Now, how a protest gets to be a riot, I don't know, right? Okay, because you know what? This is one thing I think about. One man's protest may be another person's rebellion, which is another person's protest. So from that standpoint, when we look at this, they have now passed a bill where if you are in a riot, which they say is 7 people or more, and if you violate the assault statute, you are now can be charged with a felony offense. Now, let me tell you where the problem is with this.
Wait, so if I assault somebody
Right.
while I'm protesting,
Right.
so what happens to me though if I'm assaulted while I'm protesting?
Well, that's a whole different thing. But listen to me of what assault is.
Mm-hmm.
There are different levels of assault.
Mm-hmm.
You have simple assault, which means offensive touching. If somebody just touched you
Yeah.
offensively. Then you have Class A assault, which is bodily injury. But bodily injury just means pain. So if I slap somebody, then
If I pinch someone?
that's pain.
Okay.
Okay. Then you have aggravated assault. If somebody produces like serious bodily injury, you got a broken bone or something like that.
Bruised up.
Or if somebody pulls a gun on you. For the felony, if
With the gun. I don't even have to hit somebody with the gun. I just
you
pull it out.
can just pull that out.
Oh, okay.
All right. But the thing is this. With this new provision that they're passing, if there are more than 7 people, which could be at a protest, right? And they determine that there has been offensive contact. You hear what I said? Somebody touched you.
So if someone just bumps into someone,
That could be offensive contact.
So then that's how this now becomes a riot?
That's how it becomes a felony offense.
Really?
So the predicate offense, you have to have 7 people, right?
7.
7 at least. So any protest usually has
Any effective one.
Right. It says riot means the assemblage of 7 or more persons resulting in conduct which creates an immediate danger of damage to property or injury to persons. Injury to person can be offensive touching,
But that's
or
not an injury.
but dude, that's how they wrote the statute. It says an offense under this section is a state jail felony. If it is shown
State jail felony.
180 days to 2 years and up to a $10,000 fine.
Okay.
And you can be on probation up to 10 years.
All right.
And it says that if you commit or attempt to commit an offense under 21.01A1 or 21A3. A1 is what we call touching, right? Conduct. That if I do like that's pain. If I pinch her or just lay my hand on her, that could be offensive contact. So that is criminalization of protesting. We've talked about 3 different levels today.
Okay, now in the closing minutes, and I keep looking over at the screen there because we have this loud music in the background because this is a great facility here
Awesome.
that we happen to share with the Texas Ranger baseball team. They own 2 stadiums, Globe Life Park, where we're at, and also Globe Life Field, where they're playing baseball. So if you hear the music in the background, that's what you're hearing. That's them playing. So as we go to a close, what can we do, man?
Well, hey man, we got to do this. We've said it before. We got to keep it up. We have to do a full, multifaceted attack. We have to look at these when these laws pass. Well, let me back up. Before these laws pass, we still have to continue to call our Congress people, the business individuals, to try to focus in as it relates to try to stop them from passing. That's probably not going to work. There's going to be litigation that follows this. We need to be able to research those entities that are filing suit, and we need to give them money and resources to fight these things. We have to continue to move forward through these obstacles to register and to vote, right? And we need to remember what Frederick Douglass said. That, hey, look, our liberty depends on 3 boxes. That's the ballot box, the jury box, and the bullet box.
The bullet box.
The bullet box.
You almost quote Malcolm X. The ballot box on the bullet.
Hey, Second Amendment applies to everybody, baby. And you know what? And we didn't even talk about the whole constitutional carry thing.
No, we haven't talked about that. And, you know, as we get ready to close out, we'd like to thank you for joining in with the Commish radio show. Go ahead. As we often say, this radio show is the best radio show from Como to the Congo. Where can they find you at on your social media?
Sydney, tell them where they can find us.
They can find him at legalstandpoint.Michael Todd on Facebook or on Instagram at Legal Standpoint or on LinkedIn at Legal Standpoint.
All right.
All right. And you can also find me, Ed Grade 1906 on Twitter, Ed Grade 1906 on Instagram. You see a pattern here. But also the Ed Grade political page. Add some more people to that. Because why? Guess what? In a couple of years, well, we may have a new sheriff in town. Well, not. You guys are doing a lot of redistricting. Yeah, we may have a couple of new congressmen. Take it.
All right.
Play a couple of drops and we out.
Follow Legal Standpoint. That's my dad.
All right.
Weekend.
Knowledgeable black man.